Welcome, O Ramadan.
Radio Sultanate of Oman 90.4 and the Sultan Qaboos Center for Islamic Culture presents Reaching Out Through Dialogue. Listen and get involved. It is a great experience for you personally. It would really create a balance on each and every one of us in this holy month of Ramadan.
Stand up.
Reaching Out Through Dialogue. Presented by Hatim Harif Al Abdussalam.
Charity.
Directed by Matloob Ayel Al-Wahabi. Reaching Out Through Dialogue. A special in this holy month of Ramadan. Here on 90.4 FM. 90.4 FM.
For the pleasure of
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear listeners. Welcome to our program, Reaching Out Through Dialogue. I'm your host, Hatim Al-Absalam, and my guest today is Mr. Sadiq Jawad Al-Lawati. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Sadiq. Currently the chairman of the Omani Society of Writers. Our topic today is human development and happiness, a religious necessity. Mr. Sadiq, if we can start off, we would say that there is a point of view that says that human development is a new idea introduced by modern philosophy. However, many basic social humanitarian principles like justice, equality, mercy, morals, self-censorship, and punishment are religious principles originally and have existed for human prosperity. Don't you agree that these principles are not developed by human progression, but they have always been there and were part of most of the heavenly religions?
Human development is as ancient as the human experience. From early on, human societies knew that there were certain things, certain principles, certain values, which elevated the human condition, and others that would sort of rather degrade the human condition.
Humankind.
And so the concept is ancient, it's old. It's always been there in the human mind to get better, both at the individual level and at the societal level. Now, of course, we have come to recognize through a long experience that there are certain principles and values which do indeed enhance our condition, improve our state of mind, and others which go the other way. These have been expressed throughout history by people of wisdom, whether they are prophets, philosophers, thinkers, whoever they are. They have always come to remind us about these principles and these values.
Okay.
Now, when we come to religion, naturally, religion, if you look at it, there are two aspects to a religious mission. One is, of course, the revelation, showing you that which you did not know. You knew it was there, but you didn't know what it was,
How.
The revelation comes to show you what it is.
Okay.
The other aspect of religion is to remind you of that which you already knew, but were somehow ignoring it or not paying attention to it.
So you had it at the back of your mind, but
Absolutely.
you chose to ignore it, or you didn't think that at that point of time it is an important
Maybe
value.
you thought, with all these other things that are in the human constitution, that sometimes we know what is good, but we ignore it.
Yeah.
And we know what is bad, but we still go and practice
do it. Yeah.
So the other aspect of the religious mission is to remind you of those, to bring back to your attention. Now, this is why we find that the Holy Quran is a book of revelation. It's a revealed book, but one of its function is to remind. It's also called dhikr, that
Reminder.
the reminder, that which you already knew. This means that the principles and values have been in the human consciousness from old, but the human condition, the human disposition at most of the time, to go astray of the way, needs that new, let us say, reminder.
New reminders to
that
be.
go back and be on the straight path.
On the straight
So when you say principles and values, they are not exclusively religious, they are not exclusively philosophical, they have been recognized and perceived through the human experience.
Okay.
Certain areas which were not there in the human understanding were then revealed by the scripture, such as, for example, the afterlife, the continuation of the human existence.
So these values did not exist
So
at that
these
time.
are not
They were not
values,
clear
these are
to the
concepts.
human mind.
That's right. And the values and principles have been there. And that's why we find that a religion, the more a religion has relevance to the human condition by way of emphasizing these values, the more it is a religion that's accepted by people.
It becomes a practical
and
religion.
becomes a practical religion.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, on the other hand, emphasizing on these principles in many forms throughout different civilization phases in the human history up to our modern century, isn't this an indication that these principles are an essential religious and human need at the same time?
Well, now here is the perhaps the point that one has to look at. There is no separation between humanitarian and religious values, because religious values, religious concepts, religious principles are there to serve the human condition, to make a person better. So there is no such thing as something being religious and not humanitarian, or being humanitarian.
So they have
and
to go
not
along together.
essentially religious.
They have to
They
go along
are
together. They are one.
intertwined. Yeah. However, where we differentiate is where we differentiate is where we look on what track has a certain principle has been emphasized. Has it been emphasized more in philosophy and religion? And most of the virtues that elevate the human condition have been emphasized both in philosophy and religion.
Okay.
People who take their clues and their enlightenment from religion identify the same principles
Okay.
that others might identify them in the philosophical realm.
But isn't that a solid proof of religious and human prosperity link, which will enable human hopes to develop into basic rules and principles?
Absolutely, because that's where we are. That what we are trying to really in this day and age, once our knowledge of nature has expanded so vastly than it has ever been before, so much more vastly than it has ever been before, we are now trying to really put together the entire human experience
Okay.
in terms of finding the right path. What is the proper balance, for example, between reason and faith? What is the proper balance in this sense between, let us say, religion with its different tracks of devotion, worship, what in terms of purifying yourself, and on the other hand, the disciplines of the intellect.
Okay.
We are trying to put these together so that we would then be able to see that there is a comprehensive, holistic approach that needs to be developed, which would cease then to differentiate in terms of what track or what source we got this, but look at the actual thing. For example, we would say justice is everywhere in the human consciousness, has been recognized from the ancient times.
Yeah.
We look at it how it has been expressed in the religious literature. We look at it how it has been elaborated in the philosophical literature. And then we see that the coming together of all
They're all
this,
linked together
it
into one
again flows into enhancing the human intellect.
Now, the divine principle honoring humankind that is mentioned in the Holy Quran, and we have honored the children of Adam, and we carried them on land and sea, and we have favored them on many of what we have created. How can this principle enable us to understand the needs of human social development?
Well, let me first point out that in Islam in particular, there is a very, very strong and thorough emphasis on the human being. After all, the mission, the religious mission, Islam came for the people. And it didn't come for a set of people or a group of people. It came for the
humanity
as a whole. Anyone reading the verses in the Quran begins to see that the early address of Islam, where the cosmic perspective was being developed, or the address is to humanity at large.
At large.
Okay? And so we begin to see here again that without taking into consideration that it is the human being with which the heavenly missions are engaged. They are not for the rest of the organisms
Creation.
of life. It is for the human being, because once the human being is enlightened, once the human being is settled on a solid basis of ethics and morality, then the other creatures are also taken care of. But
So basically, the most important part is the human.
Absolutely.
Once the human follows the principles and the values,
Absolutely.
and then everything
That's
else
why-
flows automatically.
That's why. This is why you see that right now, for example, it's the human being who is looking to see if any species is going to
Instinct or
go
something.
into extinction or whatnot. We are keeping track of that. When birds get caught, for example, in the oil of the Gulf of Mexico, we try to help them out. And so it's the human charge, so to speak, on Earth to look after everything that is there. And so human development means, in the larger sense, really the development
Of the whole universe.
everything that is on Earth.
How do we invest in our natural resources and in our universe as a whole in such a way it becomes a continuous and peaceful development?
Well, the latest, let us say, concept, which I think the world has come to now, is what we call the sustainable development.
Okay.
Sustainable development means that you use the resources in such a way that you do not consume them to extinction. In other words, you would be consuming some and regenerating and reproducing as well.
Okay.
So the viable development in one aspect is replacing everything that you consume. The other aspect of the viable development is that you consume resources in such a way that you would optimize the benefit from those resources.
Okay.
It would be of no good to anyone to say, eat one bread and keep 9 in the refrigerator.
Okay.
It's better that the
To
10
utilize only what you
bread-
need.
Yeah, you take what you need, you really spread the prosperity around the world, you deal with the poverty, you deal with deprivation. So sustainable development is not only using resources wisely in terms of replacing them, but also using them in a way that optimize the benefit from the resources to humankind at large.
So in somehow this will cure most of the issues that we're suffering from at this point
and
of
that's
time.
what we are engaged in now. There's a great effort, as I look at it, in the world taking place where we are trying to do those things, but we haven't found really, I'm talking collectively about the human effort, we haven't found yet the very good ways of doing all those things. And of course, as we know, that development and sustainable development again has one big hurdle to conquer, one big problem to conquer, and that is the question of stability of societies,
Okay.
the harmony among people. Because as we know that even whatever we do in terms of development, if we don't do enough in terms of resolving conflicts and bringing harmony in our interhuman relationships, we end up destroying resources at the same time.
We'll be right back shortly after this break.
Well-
Welcome back, Mr. Sadiq. So
And
all
as-
that effort in developing sustainable resources will end up in destroying them at the end of the day because of the
It could happen, or at least a big part of them,
Big
or
part of it,
a
yeah.
significant part of it. And that's why we have to, on the one hand, develop, so to speak, in that very broad sense, but on the other hand, also try to remove those factors, those negative factors, which very often take us by surprise and then destroy a lot of what we have done. The world has to be able to be effective on both levels,
Okay.
developing on the one hand and harmonizing the human relationships on the other.
A principle has been introduced lately in the media and in human rights activities, which is the human development factor. What is meant by this factor or principle, and how is it implicating in religion?
You see, as we were saying, that if you look at it, it is the human being that is your central theme in all that you are doing, religion or philosophy.
Okay.
Think of it this way. What acts please God?
Worship,
Okay?
obedience.
More than obedience and worship, it is service to other humans,
It's true.
right? God doesn't need our service,
It's true.
but God tells us that what pleases Him in terms of good deeds, not only worship, but good deeds, those deeds are not those from which God benefits, it's from which humanity benefits.
Definitely.
So when we talk about the human development factor, we are talking about something that once we are able to go on that track where human beings become better human beings as we go, more informed, more, let us say, generous in their ways, more tolerant in their ways, more understanding, more helpful to one another, more cooperative. If we can develop in our lifestyles and in our ways of dealing with one another, those tracks, those cooperative and helpful tracks, then what will happen is that the human condition itself will improve. And once that starts to improve, as we were saying, then everything else becomes also
improved.
there to be improved as well.
Now, how is human development supported by religion and religious principles in general, and in Islam specifically? And how is it all this related to human happiness?
Well, here we go again. See, Islam is concerned with the human being. The mission of the Prophet is to humankind at large.
Okay.
The Prophet has been sent, in the words of the Quran, as mercy
To mankind.
to mankind. And so we see that the central theme of Islam is the human condition. How can it be improved? And how can it be helped? In a way, helped actually to levels which we don't yet know. We haven't yet come to really understand what is the scope for our improvement. It's limitless. It only takes to be on the right track, and everything in the universe with God's will helps you to become a better individual,
Definitely.
right? And so that's where the Islamic emphasis comes there. Now, the point that you are making, if you ask the question again,
How is human development supported by religion and religious principles in general and in Islam specifically? And how is it all this related to human happiness?
here we come. This is what I was trying to say to you. See, the concept of happiness
Yeah.
is not there in Islam. If you think of it, in the Quran, you find only in 2 verses the concept of sa'adah is there. But
Which
it
is happiness.
Yeah, but it is in the afterlife. It's not here.
Yeah.
We are not talking about happiness here. We are talking of a state of mind that is so conducive to your
Needs.
to your well-being,
Mm.
that you become a person with a capacity to really do infinite good. So what we are looking at from the Islamic perspective
Mm-hmm.
is a steadiness of the mind that doesn't fluctuate between pleasure and pain, that is stable,
Okay.
that kind of deals with the good and the bad without being much affected. It just does what is right.
Okay.
So if you think of happiness, it is a byproduct of a healthy state of mind. It's not something that I would seek. What I would seek is to develop a healthy state of mind, a product or a logical product of which would be a certain equilibrium in my state that would not be, that would be, let us say, a zone of comfort in which you would be there. But the concept of happiness as being a product of pleasure seeking is not there in Islam. In fact, pleasure seeking, which can be relentless, would causes more misery than well-being. So when we talk about happiness, let's be aware that the Islamic concept is not one happiness that is a product of pleasure.
Okay.
It's a product of a sound and healthy state of mind.
Now, when the religion came with the concept of happiness, it presented happiness as being related to the individual need in the first place, not the surrounding requirements. As Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "It is strange how the believer is. Everything to him is good. If a good thing happens to him, he becomes thankful, and it is good for him. And if something bad happens to him, he becomes patient, which is also good for him." Does happiness come from the inner self, or do we look for it in the surroundings?
Okay.
In other words, does happiness come with the amount of things to have?
Okay. See, that's the steadiness of the mind. The steadiness of the mind is that in which you don't fluctuate.
Okay.
You remain steady, and you are there with optimum capacity to deal whatever comes your way.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the question then becomes, how does that come about? How do you acquire that steadiness of mind? Do you acquire it through a process of inner refinement, inner purification, inner, let us say, improvement, or do you acquire it by external things? Now, all the wise people, of course the prophets and the wise people of the old, have always pointed this out. Don't look for happiness outside ourselves. It is the inner state, it's not the external acquisition.
But this is a misconception now that the people look for happiness with exterior factors like money, houses, traveling, pleasure.
They will. But you see, they will also find out that what they have been looking for is not there. It is very common in the human endeavor that a person pursues something thinking that it's there and I'm going after it, and after a while discovers that it is not there. To save us that trouble, to put us on the right track early on, this is where the messages of the prophets and the wise people came. If we were left to our own individual, let us say, intellection, it would take us several lifetimes to really learn the lessons,
It's true.
how to, put life together in a proper way. And so we have that great advantage of so much wisdom that has been poured before us and made available to us, both on the religious track and both on the philosophical track, that we today are early on told as we grow up, don't think that that is what will give you happiness.
Yeah.
And as you know, everywhere we find that it's not the place, it's not even the time. People, for example, think, I will go on a vacation and I'll be happy in Switzerland. If you are not happy here, you are not going to be happy there.
in Switzerland. It's true.
Okay? Yeah. And
So what you mean to say, it's a state of mind.
it's in the inner
It's your
state.
choice.
Yeah, it's not even a choice. It is something that has to do with how you are constituted. As you think, that's how you are. If you are a person who has a very, let us say, erratic view of the universe, a very negative view of the universe, that of course makes you behave as such. Your relationships with people also are affected in that way. So what I'm trying to say to you is that it is what is inside that defines, that shapes your condition. It is not the outside part of it. The outside part of it, you might say, it lends to your comfort, maybe. You can sit on a most comfortable seat or lie down on a most comfortable bed. But if your mind is not at peace,
They wouldn't have
it will not
happiness,
help
no.
you. On the other hand, if your mind is at peace, you are at peace with yourself, you are at peace with the cosmic environment, and of course you are divinely at peace with everything that is there, then even if you sleep under a tree, you will have a very good sound sleep.
So does this give us a relation between happiness and satisfaction? It means if you have the satisfaction of your life, of what you have, and that this is what is meant for you to have, is this going to elevate you to a higher rank of happiness?
Well, let me put it to you. It's not what you don't know what's meant for you. To use that word means to limit yourself. You don't know what's meant for you. You only take things as they are. There is the word satisfaction, which can be deceiving. But I think a better, perhaps, word is, let us say, contentment. Let us say acceptance. Let us say being freely engaging with everything that comes your way, without prejudice, without judgment.
Okay.
And in that case, you will see that the possibilities are so many that you would be able to derive a lot of well-being, a sense of well-being that I call, from very little things. It's because your capacity is such that you are able to get so much from so little. If, on the other hand, you have not developed your internal capacity, you will not be able to derive even a little from so much around you.
That's true. We'll be right back shortly after this break. Welcome back, Mr. Sadiq. In Islam, and precisely in the moral perspective, the concept of self-purification implemented, which means developing human morality and elevating towards better moral conduct. If we wanted to put the concept of self-purification against the concept of development, and we noticed that development emphasizes on the human surrounding that they live in, wouldn't we need the concept of self-purification to elevate the inner human so that development can continue and prosper?
See, in essence, human development, one might say, includes or incorporates the self-purification part of it. But just to make to make things a little bit clearer, I would put it this way: if you look at development in a quantitative concept, then we will be looking at improving things around us rather than improving things from
within us.
On the other hand, the tazkiyah, or the self-refinement, purification, is more qualitative in the sense that you are improving from yourself from inside, and you are not really very much attentive to what is around you. Yeah. Now, the question that becomes, are these two things really very separate, very kind of mutually exclusive? They are not mutually exclusive. You could improve things around you, and that's part of your task on being on this earth, is to make it better, meaning that you should plant the earth with...
so improve for yourself and improve for others as well. Yeah.
At the same time, you are improving yourself. But here we do, in the old Chinese literature, we find these two tracks there. And actually, two philosophers who were contemporaneous, they came at the same time. One was Confucius and the one was Lao Tzu. Confucius said, and both of them, of course, came at a time when China had seen a lot of internal strife and turbulence and so on. And to Confucius, the thought came that if you are going to go on the track of improving people one by one, gosh, this will take ages and you will not be able to achieve anything.
Yeah.
So he came to the philosophy of that said, let us improve the conduct, and the improved conduct will
automatically reflect on people.
On the internal self.
Okay.
So he put emphasis on etiquette, on good behavior, on greeting people properly, on manners, so to speak, right? And his thought was that would then sink into the consciousness of the people, and they would become used to this. Eventually, they will improve from inside. But his the other philosopher, Lao Tzu, said, well, that may not be so. And it is what you have to improve the person first so that he would then conduct himself better in society. Again, here we find that the two concepts are not mutually exclusive. It's just where you put the emphasis, you see.
Okay.
And if you look at it in the Islamic perspective, you find that they are mutually kind of inclusive, in the sense that we are required at the same time that we improve ourselves from inside and keep purifying and becoming better persons, but we are required also to be mindful and very attentive as to how we behave in society.
Okay.
So even though I am not yet a very improved person, but if I oblige myself, if I take upon myself as a task to behave properly, even my thoughts are still not good, but I behave, I'm kind of society
oriented,
wants me to, they help. Eventually
they help improving yourself.
So what I'm trying to say, that these are not mutually exclusive concepts. We can include them together, and we might say, yes, we need to do this, yes, we need to do that. I see. But always at the center of our concern is the improvement of the human being, because that's the key to improving everything on earth.
So in conclusion, how do we look in general into the link or connection between human development and happiness in the religious consciousness and in our human daily needs?
Okay. Again, here, let us differentiate between two concepts here.
Okay.
One is hardship and one is peace of mind. Now, hardship people can take. Hardship comes with, say, poverty, when you don't have the proper facilities, when things are rough, when things are kind of...
not working out.
Not working out. This is hardship. But you are not internally disturbed. You are only putting up with a lot of difficult things to do, and you are doing them, and yet you might be doing them, but your state of mind is at peace.
Okay.
On the other hand, it's the peace of mind, which is not hardship. You might be in comfortable circumstances, but you are not at rest, you are not in tranquility because something is bothering you from inside.
Okay.
Right. Now,
you're talking about the external factors and the internal factors.
Now, when we come to that, that's where we say that if we are looking to see what do we do, then we tell ourselves, well, look, we want to relieve the hardship of people, because in hardship there is deprivation, there is poverty. If you give me, a high IQ child, but if you deprive that child of education, you are stifling something that has, infinite potential.
Okay.
So you want to make things easy. You want to put a school in the neighborhood. You want to make things in you have to provide a good meal to the child so the child doesn't suffer from malnutrition or whatever. That aspect is very important, because if you don't take care of this human individual at this age, and later on as the person grows, then you are incapacitating him.
Okay.
Even though the person has potential for a great, for infinite goodness. And that's why this is important, is to create prosperity.
The necessity needs.
The basic needs.
Basic needs.
That enable the person to blossom in his or her capacity. But if you provide those basic needs and yet do not take care of improving the person, or let us say creating those disciplines, or introducing perhaps those disciplines, then this thing stops at comfort. You have made the person comfortable, but you haven't really activated the human potential within it.
Okay.
So you need to do both. You do.
They go along
care.
together.
And so the development concept is important in this sense. It's the empowering concept. It is creating the right conditions in which a human being can flourish.
Okay.
And then we come to the other concept, which is then bringing up people on ideas and in thoughts and in early introduction to values and principles and so on, so that you would improve that person. And I've made always this argument that knowledge in itself, even if we teach our children, but knowledge is simply empowering. It is not a source of guiding. A person, if you want, make him an engineer. He can build a bomb or he can build a bridge.
That's true.
But you have to then introduce with knowledge the ethical dimension, so that you would ensure that the empowerment that you are giving the person
Will bring
in this
goodness.
case will bring goodness. Otherwise, you will never be sure. People can get to be very smart, and smart people do sometimes good things, bad things, whatever. But the variant is what? The variant is how they are brought up in terms of understanding or in terms of relating to the ethical and moral requirements of a good life.
Mr. Sadiq, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And thank you so much to our listeners for listening. See you all tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you very much.